Welcome back to the Anchorage podcast, and happy Valentine's Day to you. As we're talking last time about people that God had brought into your life for such a time as this, and it's Valentine's Day. Seems right. Maybe we should just you should share with us about how you and Jeannie met.
I'd be happy to. Certainly, Jeannie has been a part of the ministry since almost the beginning, almost as long as I have. We were married in 1980, August of 1980, and she has obviously been with me through thick and thin, mostly thin, for all these years. And it is very clear to anybody that knows us, knows the ministry, that she is probably more vital to the ministry than I am. And it has been a great partnership for many, many, many years. I could not have functioned without her, and I don't think the ministry could have functioned without her. That's from the Lord, and so we have to take it as the Lord. He brought us together. It was an interesting scenario. People like to hear our story. It's kind of unique in some ways, but it was very clearly of the Lord. I didn't recognize it at the time, but so many times looking back and going, okay, Lord, you had that in your plan all along. And I didn't see it, or didn't want to see it, or who knows, maybe I'm just dumb. but the end game is that it was very clearly of the Lord. And it started, I guess, my sophomore year. We were at Bob Jones, both of us at Bob Jones. I did not know Jeannie at the time. She was from Minnesota, had never been to South Carolina until she came as a freshman the year before.
Wow.
And her brother came with her, who neither one had seen the university or had any part of it. They just had heard about it through friends and decided that's where they needed to spend their education. And so we started as freshmen together, although we didn't know each other from Adam's Cat. And then as a sophomore, I guess girls seem to like me, okay? And, all the way through high school, from junior high, I think when I recognized probably around age 12 that girls were really cool, that I pretty much always had a girlfriend of sorts. I mean, I was not a serious relationship type of guy. It was all about me, always all about me. And so there was a steady stream of girls in and out of my life all the way through high school. That's pretty typical of most high school kids. We're young and dumb. And I guess same thing was kind of true freshman year of college, and planning same kind of scenario, sophomore year of college and junior year. I had no intentions of looking for a serious relationship at that point in time. One of the things that had impressed my mind, my brother had met in college, his wife, gotten married, and I realized that marriage was probably in my future somewhere, but it was not front and center on my mind. The one thing I did like in college, and this is back in the 70s, of course, was I liked to go on their society outings, because generally the food was good, and I'd pretty much do anything for a steak dinner. We didn't grow up with eating steak, and so a steak was a very special occasion. A lot of the outings had steak, and so anytime I could go on one of the society outings, I would go because I like steak. This is I'm shallow, but
You mean you were shallow?
There's some debate, but the end game is that as we go into sophomore year, this is relatively early in the sophomore year. Actually, I guess kind of mid-semester, because it had been the very end of October. My sister, who was also in college at the time, she was a senior that year. She says, David, she says, do you have an outing for such and such a weekend? I think it was the last weekend in October, if I remember correctly. And I'm like, I don't think so. But she says, well, hold that weekend. She says, my roommate has had a terrible time trying to find somebody to go on her outing. She really wants to go on her outing, but she's asked a number of guys and they can't go or won't go or whatever reason. And she said, I told her my brother likes to go on outings. I don't think he's busy that weekend, and he just likes the food. So that's the direction that we need to go. If you think about it. So I think she asked out a couple more guys even after my sister talked to me, but she sent me a little note. That's the way everything was done back in those days.
Yep.
We didn't have phones and cell phones and email and all that kind of stuff. So she sent me a note, asked me out. I didn't know her from Adam's cat. And again, I don't even know if I had seen a picture of her. It was one of those things that
Well, blind dates.
it was blind as it can be. But, I understood that there was nothing to this as far as relational. This was all a matter of I'm going for the food. She's going because she likes to go on outings, but she had to have a date to do it. And so I was that guy that filled in the spot. My goal be met. I was going to eat steak. Her goal be met. It was going to be an outing and have some fun with her friends and all that. So we went, and it was very no pressure because both of us knew why we were there. It was and it had nothing really to do with each other. So it was kind of a fun time. We had a good time. We went up to one of the mountain retreat centers out there. It was in the fall. The leaves were looking out over the valley. The leaves were very nice and all that kind of stuff. We had a great time together, just relaxed, enjoying, not trying to impress each other. In fact, when she tells the story, she says she had to bring somebody who knew what I looked like to point me out to her, so that when we met right before we headed out of this outing,
Anyway, we'd say this is a double blind date.
This is a double blind date. This is purely, for whatever reason, it was purely for the food and stuff. So we went. We had a nice time, and obligatory is after you've been asked on somebody's outing, you're supposed to. This kind of the unwritten rules at college at that point in time is that you had to ask them out again. So I asked her out on I think it was Florida series, if I remember right, which was one of the Shakespearean plays. So it was a dress-up occasion and all that kind of stuff. And we had a good time. I mean, we had a really good time on the outing. And, as was my way of life at that point in time, I was spending more of my time kind of scoping out who else was there to see if there's anybody I might want to really ask out eventually. I was shallow. Okay, let's just say that. And so we went, and I asked her out. And so I guess our first real date would have been to Artist Series. And we dated from that point in time. It was an interesting day. That it was right before Thanksgiving. I remember that. Of course, that's when the Shakespeare plays were back in those days. I'd been motorcycling up in the mountains on that day and almost got killed twice, dumping my motorcycle. So what could have... I decided to get rid of my motorcycle shortly after that. But the end game was that we had a nice time, and we dated off and on, relatively steadily, but not seriously, for the rest of that sophomore year. Other people as well, but each other more than other people. And by the end of the year, I realized I really like this girl. There's something different about her than anybody I'd ever dated at this point in time. And so going into summer, the end of course, things went till Memorial Day weekend. Back in those days, you actually had a semester that ended at summertime, and so she was going to stay and because she had changed her major, I think, and so she was going to stay and go to summer school, and I was going home and work at the camp. I was in college, and so there was a break between the end of the semester and the beginning of summer school of about almost a week, not quite a week, and so she needed a place to go. Of course, she was roommates with Mary Vick. She was going to be in Mary Vick's wedding later on that summer. Was it that summer? No, it wasn't that summer. That was next year. But the end of game is that she decided to spend those few days at Lake Waccamaw with my sister, even though we had been dating, and I would
maybe that was just a tool.
Yeah, well, I don't think so, but anyway, long and short of it is that I was ready to start a relatively serious relationship, certainly more serious than anything I'd been in up to this point in time. And so I was really frustrated because she wasn't paying me the time, give me the time of day for whatever. My aunt had a house or a cottage at the beach, and we decided, after being in college all spring, and she from Minnesota and full Scandinavian, we decided to go to the beach on Memorial Day, which was, obviously a Monday. And we went out to the beach together and stayed on the beach from like 9:30 till 5:30. Unbelievable. And were cooked beyond words. And it was so bad. I mean, the sunburn was so bad. And so we are now sharing misery in a great way. And for whatever reason, the Lord used that to draw us together. We actually had a real date. I think we went to what is now Dale Seafood, and went out and had a real date, and started actually at that point that summer started being serious. I wrote her every day, and she wrote back every day, and we just shared thoughts and all that kind of stuff. So that end of the summer, she actually came back before she went to school, came back to Lake Waccamaw to visit me. Yes, when. So it was, that's the way it was. And so we were going back, and went back to school, started school, and we're seeing each other. And for whatever reason, the Lord was working on me at that point in time. This is start my junior year. Junior year, things changed for me dramatically in a spiritual sense. And I knew it was time to start getting serious, which means you had to get way less self-centered, and which that was not in my DNA, because it was all about David at that point in time. And so I guess you could sense a change. Jeannie was not there. I don't know if she was not there because I was not a terribly spiritual person, or for whatever reason. She'd have to answer those questions, but she was not there. And so we would maybe been back at school a week, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. And I guess it was on a Sunday. We were at church together, and whatever, the preaching had really hit home with me that it was time to lose yourself and move forward. And so I responded to the invitation on that, and so we didn't see each other in the service, but we met each other mid-afternoon. And I just knew, I'm like, this relationship's over. She's going to break up with me today. We just started dating. I liked the seriousness of the situation, of the relationship, but I'm like, she's going to break up with me. So being the good selfish and being in position to win, I broke up with her. So it's the way it works. And she was like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's good. Great. And so we went our separate ways. And there was always in the back of my mind, again, I was a jerk in high school. And so it was always in the back of my mind is that you in any type of relationship with a girl, you had to have the upper hand. So you took control of the situation. And so that's why the whole breakup. And certainly you never went crawling back to a girl. That was just, your weak and sorry friends did that kind of stuff. That was it. When it was over, end of game. And that was kind of my rules of life. So there I was in my junior year, and we went separate. We saw each other across campus every once in a while, smiled and said hello. And didn't think any more about it. I dated other girls. She dated other guys. And, we're on separate tracks of life. And after, I think I've mentioned it before, one of the big turning points of my life was when Dr. Strobane was preaching. This had been spring of my junior year, same year, where he was preaching through Psalm 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. And his signature line is a signature sermon of his. His signature line was, marriage isn't so much finding the right thing, finding the right person, as being the right person. And I remember that hit home because at this point in time, I had realized that marriage was probably in my future. Didn't know who, but marriage was probably in my future. So I realized going, okay, that makes sense. I can do that. And that was pretty much the moment that changed my life from living almost exclusively for myself to going, okay, whatever's right. That's what I'm going to do. Doesn't matter what the results are. Whatever's the right thing to do, that's what I'm going to do. And obviously, following the Lord was what it was going to entail. Again, there was no invitation. There was no, crying or whatever else. It was just that's it. I know how to do that. We can do that. And so that was it. Still had no Jeannie, no nothing. Went through summer camp. Came back to school. I think Jeannie was dating somebody else at that point in time. And for whatever reason, I just have to blame it on the Lord. For whatever reason, and people were teasing me, going, because I think people thought a lot of Jeannie, and they should have. They're like, David, how did you let that one get away? But they're like, yeah, David, she just got you on a loose line, and she's gonna hook you and reel you in. You watch out. I'm like, no, this will never happen. But anyway, whatever reason, we'll blame it on the Lord. The Lord just put on my heart, said, David, you left that badly. It was a very selfish, very prideful act that you're just gonna throw away a relationship based on you just wanted to be the guy in control or whatever else. And you've got to make it right. And you said you're going to do the right thing. This is the right thing. So you need to ask her out. And I fought against it. It was a spiritual battle. Oh my word, it was a spiritual battle, almost like a physical battle. I can understand Jacob and the angel at this point in time. I was quick. I take that angel thing. This is rough, but I battled with it. And so finally, as young, immature people do, I put some fleeces out before the Lord. And I was like, okay, Lord, I know this is not what you want me to do, but just in case you did, if you would put if you want me to ask her out, then here's the two things. Here's two criteria that I'll know this is of you. Number one, they had for meal times there back in the 70s, they had assigned seating at the meals there, family style meals. And I said, I need to be assigned. We need to have tables assigned. I think they came out about every 3 weeks or so. And I said, we need to have tables assigned together, which in a crowd that size was pretty not likely. I said, or she needs to ask me on her outing. One of those two things. This is it. Neither one of them. I mean, we're talking about the sun going backwards. It would have probably been easier than either one of those. And so I was very, very satisfied with it. That's the way it's going to be. So it went on. So we're over into October now. So we're talking from August to October, end of August to October. So a month and a half or so. And so I just wrestled this as every day. The Lord not giving me any peace at all. And finally, it was actually the last weekend, the first weekend in October, last weekend of September. A good friend of mine lived across the hall, and I had come up to camp for the weekend to help out with something that was coming up here on camp. And as we were driving back, he was talking about a relationship and that he was trying to get involved in. And I was like, transparency, I guess, is good for the soul. And I had this wrestling battle with the Lord on that Friday right before we left. I mean, it was, again, as real as spiritual battles can get real. It was almost like a physical thing. And I remember I could take you to the time, I could take you to the place. I could, every point out, I remember just getting down on my knees, and I never pray on my knees. That's just not what I do. It's not my dynamic. But I was on my knees by my bed. Okay, Lord, all right, I will ask her out if that's what you want me to do, and you'll see you're wrong. So, and literally that was it. I've always wondered.
Probably not a prayer of faith.
It was not a prayer of faith. But I guess that's what the Lord was looking for, because after that, it was, now I knew where I was going to head. It was going to be embarrassing because I don't do rejection well. And, and so we were riding back, and I told nobody about anything. And so we're riding back late at night, I think it was on Sunday night. And my friend who was talking about it, he's like, yeah, I'm going to ask so-and-so out. I'm like, yeah, okay, good. That's great. Good girl. And I said, yeah, well, I've decided I'm going to ask Jeannie out again. I said, don't expect anything to come of it, but I'm going to ask Jeannie out again. And he looks at me, he says, you know it's for keeps if you do it, Ol. I'm like, yeah, I kind of recognize that, but it's, nothing's going to happen. He said, are you sure that's the right thing to do? And I said, yeah. I said, in fact, I am so positive, I'm so sure that it's right, that when I get back to the dorm tonight, there'll be a note on the door, her asking me on her outing. He goes, really? I said, no. It's just pie in the sky stuff. So we got back. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and we get back. He was right across the hall from me, and he got to the rooms first. And he says, hey, oh, he said, who do you know in Margaret Mack, whatever room number it was? I'm like, I don't know anybody there. Why? He said, you got a note. And so I looked at the door. I says, I don't know anybody by the room number. I said, but that's Jeannie's writing. As many times I'd see that. He goes, really? Of course, he was a good friend, so he's reading over my shoulder. And so I opened the note, and so he's reading over my shoulder. I'm looking at the note, and her basically is saying, well, I couldn't find anybody to go on my outing, and so I really want to, go with me. I think it was somewhere toward the end of October. And he goes, did you know this was coming? I said, no. I said, I had no idea. Didn't tell him I'd prayed that as a fleece or anything like that. I said, I had no idea this was coming. He goes, that's scary, all. And I'm like, yeah, you got that right. And from that point on, I had no question in my mind. Okay, I'll pursue this relationship without me in it, and without me interfering in it, I guess would be the best way, until the Lord absolutely closes the door. Either we get married, or it's just very clear this is not a direction it's going to happen. It's going to go. Now, so I focused like a laser beam on that, and it went. I couldn't go on the outing after all, so I had another outing with somebody else at that point in time. So anyway, long and short of it was, we started up our relationship there. I think we had a date, might have been actually for Artist Series again. I have no idea what our first date was, but we started hitting it up from there. And there was, it scared Jeannie, because she had no intention. She just wanted to go on her outing. And it scared Jeannie pretty badly, because she was like, there was a difference there. I'm like, well, yeah. Lord had told me that, had confirmed this undoubtedly, that this is the direction I was going to go. So we were going.
I have come crawling back now.
This is what crawling looks like. And so I was all in as far as that goes. It took her a while. And the reason that I am so happy to do this on Valentine's Day, so that would have been 79, Valentine's in 1979. So they had this nice meal at BJ, steak actually, I think. They were so thin you could read a newspaper through them. But it
was free.
Yeah, well, no, we
no,
paid
not
for
really.
That thing. But so we went to the Valentine's thing, and we're headed to, I think, an Academy concert or something like that for our Valentine's evening. And she had been just ridiculously closed for, I don't know, a week and a half or 2 weeks at this point in time. Nice, Jeannie was wrong, nothing. Jeannie, nothing. Hello, have a nice day. Stuff like that. It was just no communication really at all of anything meaningful. And so we are in Rhoda Haver Auditorium there at Bob Jones University, sitting together, waiting for the concert to start. People are talking, and it's, kind of relatively loud. And I am worried about this thing. I'm invested at this point in time. And so we're sitting um, in there, and people around me that I knew, because you have a tendency to sit with acquaintances and friends in a situation like that. So there was a crowd of people in there, probably 2,000 or so. And so there was one of these 7-minute lulls. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what a 7-minute lull is, but this is basically they've determined, they call it 7 minutes, that on average every 7 minutes that in a crowded room that it'll all get quiet at some point. Right. And then flares back up for no apparent reason. So it's right there, the time of 7-minute lull, and I'm trying to have this conversation meaningful. She's closed as it could be, and I look at her and one last time, Jeannie, what is wrong? This has been a while now. What is wrong? And don't say nothing. She turns and it goes quiet. I mean, we're talking about pin drop quiet. And she says out loud, very loud, I'm not ready to get married. And of course, all heads turned. You can't miss that. And that thing, all heads turned and just were staring a hole at us. My friend, I won't call his name, but my friend next to me is under his chair laughing, I think, at this kind of situation with this.
You're probably thinking, I didn't even ask.
I know, and that's exactly. I'm like, and that was my response, was almost as loud. Well, have I asked you to marry me? No. Boom. Everything was fine after that. We went on, moved forward, and the Lord used it. And frankly, obviously this is of the Lord. Is of the Lord's timing. We have had a wonderful marriage and good family, and times have been hard for many years. Financially, they've been hard, but they have not really been hard. The Lord's had every step of the way, and she has become such a vital part of the ministry here and carried it, not just in what she does, food service and hospitality and playing the piano and all of this kind of thing, but just for who she is and the effect and the influence that she's had on just countless lives. And I'm looking back going, okay, there was no way in the world that this would have worked without this partnership. And going as improbable, because we come from very different backgrounds and very different worldviews and frame of mind, I guess, in our upbringing, for the Lord to bring it together. And you have to go, okay, Lord, that was of you. And once again, I learned something that I could trust, even though it didn't make a bit of sense to me and certainly was against my nature, because I was an arrogant dude. And some of that arrogance needed to fall off very quickly for the Lord to make out of me what he needed to make out of me at that point in time. So there's our love story, and it has grown from there. We've been married 44 years now. I think this is 45 for us, and so it's been a good journey.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. I hope that's been an encouragement to you just to get a little more information about the relationship and how Lord brought them together. And I want to encourage you as we close out this episode, visit our website. Go by and check out. We have some up and coming retreats and opportunities for you, a senior adult retreat, our men's retreat, father-son retreat. Check those out. We'd love to see you here at the Anchorage.
Thank you for listening to the Anchorage podcast. If you would like to learn more about the Anchorage Christian Camp, visit our website, anchoragecamp.org. If you have questions or podcast suggestions, please email info@anchoragecamp.org. May God be glorified. Hebrews 6:19, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth into that within the veil.